What if I told you that a single train derailed could shift the balance of power in a country at war? On the morning of October 26, 2025, the sun barely kissed the horizon, but the fate of an entire front line was about to be sealed in chaos. Russian military trains, critical lifelines for the invasion force, had grown too comfortable on the tracks of occupied Ukraine, unaware of the eyes lurking in the shadows. Ukrainian partisans, driven by resolve and stealth, were mapping every route, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. In the sleepy district of Berdyansk, a massive train, over 70 meters long, lumbered along, laden with weaponry and ammunition destined for the front lines. This was not an ordinary supply run, it held the hopes of Russian soldiers desperate for resources. But unbeknownst to them, a sinister plan had been set in motion weeks prior. High-powered explosives lay hidden on the tracks, meticulously placed at precisely the right spots, camouflage prepared long before the train even left the depot. As the train approached, tension hung in the air like the smell of gunpowder. The moment it reached the deadly point, an explosion ruptured the calm, sending the locomotive and its trailing cars hurtling off the tracks. Vivid flames and thick smoke obscured the sky as a violent chain reaction erupted, scattering steel and destruction for kilometers around. The crack of thunder echoed like a death knell, drowning out the cries of victory that would soon follow. In a landmark operation, Ukrainian partisans dismantled a substantial portion of Russia's logistical might, crippling their southern front strategy entirely. The train's destruction wasn't merely an accident, it symbolized a burgeoning resistance, showing how deep the fissures of uncertainty run within the occupying forces. With this one audacious act, they had not only blasted apart a train but had effectively submerged Russia's carefully laid plans beneath the burning wreckage. The ramifications of this strike sprawled far beyond that single morning. For the Russian military, already battling shortages from consistent partisan attacks, this incursion meant an intensifying crisis. The lifeblood that flowed through their maneuvers, ammunition, food, and reinforcements, was suddenly constricted, leaving soldiers to grapple with the reality of a forsaken front line, extinguishing morale faster than bullets could fly. As chaos unfolded, Russia's response would be swift but futile. They resorted to visceral tactics, rage and paranoia, dispatching hordes of security forces to clamp down on potential traitors, preying on the very people they sought to control. But could fear suppress an uprising that had already started gathering steam? The true enemy wasn't just the Ukrainian military, it was an emerging spirit of resilience among the populace, feeding the fires of resistance. What happens next? With each setback, the cries for change grow louder, as new, daring operations loom on the horizon. If Ukrainian partisans could so readily breach a lesser-known supply line, what would stop them from targeting the main artery connecting occupied territories to Crimea? All eyes in the Kremlin would have to wonder how far could this fight go, and when would the fire of resistance finally consume their regime? The walls of oppression built by the Kremlin have begun to crack, illuminated by the blaze of Ukrainian courage. And the echoes of that early dawn will resonate in every corner of occupied land, reminding all that while they may attempt to suppress a flame, it still flickers, waiting to ignite into a powerful inferno capable of overthrowing an empire. In a world teetering on the edge of chaos, a single moment can reshape the course of a war. On October 26, 2025, a Russian military train, brimming with ammunition and weaponry, rolled slowly towards its destination. Unbeknownst to the soldiers aboard, their fate was already sealed. Stealthily, Ukrainian partisans had laid explosive traps on the tracks days prior, cunningly hidden from watchful eyes. As the train hit that critical point, a cataclysm erupted. The explosion was unlike anything ever witnessed. The powerful force launched the massive locomotive, along with 3 accompanying platforms, off the rails and down a treacherous slope. But the true catastrophe lay within the 10 sealed freight cars attached to the engine, likely brimming with high-caliber shells, cluster rockets, and tank munitions, all desperately yearned for by the frontline troops. As the initial blast resonated through the air, it triggered a catastrophic chain reaction. The resulting explosions, each more deafening than the last, transformed the sky into a horrifying spectacle of fire and destruction. These crates of death flew into the heavens, creating a symphony of chaos that echoed for miles, alerting villagers to the nightmare unfolding just beyond their horizon. In mere moments, the train, once a symbol of Russian might, was reduced to smoldering ruins. The implications were dire.
A vital lifeline, the railway between Chernigovka and Stolniva, lay in ruin.
Transport ground to a halt, halting supplies essential for sustaining Russian forces in the region. This catastrophe was more than just the obliteration of a train, it marked a pivotal turning point, as supplies dwindled and the spirit of the soldiers began to falter. In the face of imminent ammunition shortages, Russian troops found themselves pleading for aid from an increasingly stretched Kremlin. To grasp the significance of this sabotage, one must understand the strategic value of the railway line in question. Serving as a crucial corridor, it connected the occupied territories of Melitopol, Berdyansk, and ultimately Crimea to Russia. Without it, the lifeblood of Putin's southern forces began to run dry. Desperation enveloped the Russian positions south of Zaporizhzhia. There, troops, already facing dwindling resources due to Ukraine's relentless attacks on supply chains, found themselves cut off from hope.
With nowhere to turn, the realization dawned: these supply lines had become a new battleground. Would the Kremlin be able to reclaim them, or would they unravel, leaving countless soldiers stranded in a fight against despair? As whispers of dissent grew, and murmurs of betrayal filled the air, the once mighty Russian front began to tremble. The question lingered: how could an empire fail not only at the hands of its adversaries but also against the silent resistance of its own, unseen adversaries? In homes and towns everywhere, ordinary citizens transformed as they embraced the struggle, aware that they too wielded the power to disrupt the oppressors in ways unseen. What would unfold next across the scarred landscape? Would the whispers turn into an unstoppable tide of rebellion? Or would fear tighten its grip? Only time would tell, but one thing was certain: the spirit of resistance burned, flickering defiantly against the dark skies of occupation. In the previous segment, we explored how Ukrainian partisans have effectively targeted Russia's logistical lifeline, a critical railway that connects the Russian mainland to occupied territories. This crucial artery, vital for resource movement, is now compromised, leaving Russian troops feeling abandoned and vulnerable. Thousands of tons of ammunition, fuel, food, and fresh reinforcements usually flow through this path, nourishing the machinery of occupation. But with the recent sabotage of a 70-meter military train, that flow has been drastically interrupted. Russian soldiers entrenched near Tokmak and Melitopol already suffer amid dwindling supplies, further exacerbated by strategic strikes against their depots. This train, once their last hope for sustenance, is now a smoking wreckage. What will the fallout be? Russian artillery units, once capable of firing 100 rounds daily, may soon be reduced to only 10, leaving them nearly silent. Their tank battalions, stripped of ammo, can only watch as Ukrainian armored teams advance with newfound bravery. Each soldier understands the grim reality: the Kremlin has forsaken them. Morale, crucial to any fighting force, begins to disintegrate, leading to a surge in desertion among the ranks. But this triumph for the partisans carries a foreboding message. If they dismantle less defended positions with such ease, where will they strike next? Their eyes are set on the jugular, the vital railway connecting Melitopol directly to Crimea. If this line too falls victim to sabotage, the southern front would crumble under the weight of isolation. Trapping thousands of Russian troops in Crimea without food or supplies, turning their defenses into a deadly prison. Can Russia manage the chaos brewing within? The looming specter of starving soldiers could push them to desperation, and all the resources the Kremlin can muster may not be enough. As the days unfold, fear will seep deeper into the hearts of the Russian soldiers, and the command will grapple with the unsettling truth that victory is slipping further away. As partisans scout the main railway for weaknesses, how will the Kremlin respond to this internal strife? Countermeasures will surely emerge, but can brute strength quell the shadows that have begun to shift in the towns? The efforts of unseen locals, operating with cunning and resolve, pose an even greater threat to the occupiers. The real horror for the Kremlin lies not in the advanced attacks, but in the possibility that victory is being foiled by their very neighbors. In this game of wills, each train journey could transform into a treacherous expedition. Could the next mission uncover an even larger conspiracy, or fuel greater tragedies? The whispers of resistance echo ominously, ready to ignite at any moment. In the aftermath of a devastating sabotage, Ukrainian partisans are strategically mapping out vulnerabilities in the critical railway line connecting Melitopol to Crimea.
This operation, if executed successfully, could trap tens of thousands of Russian soldiers in Crimea, leaving them hungry and vulnerable, essentially a death knell in the ongoing conflict. As panic sets in, the Kremlin's response is swift and drastic. In a bid to regain control, hundreds of Federal Security Service and National Guard troops flood the regions of Chernigovka and Stolnovet. They begin a relentless hunt for potential collaborators. Homes are subjected to unnerving raids, with locals taken for questioning and sent to filtration camps merely on suspicion. This campaign of fear aims to sever the bonds between the partisans and the community, a tactic as old as the war itself. Yet their actions feel desperate and futile. As they attempt to bolster defenses with watchtowers and patrols made up of inexperienced conscripts, it becomes clear these measures are as effective as trying to drain the ocean with a cup. Russia's true adversary isn't just the Ukrainian armed forces, it's the immense expanse of territory under occupation, coupled with the simmering resentment of its inhabitants. Given the staggering loss of over 1 million soldiers in this relentless war, there's a critical shortage of manpower. Every unit diverted from the front lines for protection weakens the fight against Ukraine. The real brilliance of Ukraine's partisan strategy lies in its ability to force Russia to deplete its military resources, all while sabotaging the very supply lines it desperately needs. What will unfold next, as the tension escalates and the stakes rise? The answer could change the course of the war. In a gripping tale of covert warfare, the dynamics of power shift dramatically on the battlegrounds of Ukraine as the Russian military grapples with an unprecedented crisis. The essence of Ukraine's resistance lies not just in arms, but in the hearts and minds of the very people living under occupation. As Russian units are conscripted to safeguard their own logistics, they inadvertently strip the front line of crucial manpower. Each battalion pulled from active duty means more vulnerabilities and lost ground. This cunning tactic breeds chaos within Russia's strategy, forcing them to exhaust their own resources while desperately trying to maintain control. But the stakes are much higher than mere military strategy. Resistance movements, such as the renowned Atesh, have evolved beyond simple acts of sabotage. They now operate as a sophisticated network, clandestine cells intricately woven into the fabric of local society, trained and financed by Ukraine's military intelligence. These operatives possess keen insights, knowing the rhythms of Russian patrols and the weak points of their defenses. Despite Russia's ramping up of security measures, these seasoned partisans continue their operations undeterred. They adapt, becoming more elusive and complex in their tactics while remaining committed to their cause. The only real solution for Russia lies in a full retreat from Ukrainian territory. Until that reality is faced, the entire country becomes a veritable minefield for the Russian military, where every railway track is fraught with peril and each train becomes a potential disaster waiting to unfold. The catastrophic train derailment that occurred on October 26 was not merely a loss of essential supplies, it symbolized a deeper rot within the Russian war machine. As flames engulfed the remnants of the burning freight, they ignited not only the ammunition on board but the very essence of Ukraine's resilient spirit. Darkness can't extinguish the fire of resistance, rather, it illuminates a profound fear within the Kremlin's inner circles. This disaster forces Russian generals to confront an uncomfortable truth: their adversaries extend far beyond the visible battlefield. Those who orchestrated the sabotage may not have been elite soldiers of Ukraine, but everyday citizens: an electrician, a farmer, or a railway worker living under the shadow of occupation. This reality highlights the nightmare scenario for the Russian Federal Security Services. It's one thing to fend off soldiers, it's another to combat an unseen army composed of the local populace, determined and resourceful in the face of adversity. The breadcrumb trail of resistance will only grow, revealing that the heart of Ukraine beats stronger than anyone conceived, resilience forged in fiery defiance. In the shadows of occupied Ukraine, a powerful resistance flourishes, fueled not by a formal military structure, but by the everyday lives of ordinary citizens. The chilling truth is that the whispers of war echo through the very streets where Russian soldiers patrol, turning the local electrician, the devoted farmer, and the humble railway worker into unwitting guardians of a deep-rooted resistance network. These civilians, who once exchanged pleasantries with patrolling soldiers, have transformed into eyes and ears, gathering intelligence that fuels Ukraine's ongoing fight against oppression. On a fateful morning, October 26, 2025, the clash between these two worlds erupted in a resounding explosion. A Ukrainian intelligence operation, powered by local knowledge, led to the derailment of a massive military train laden with vital supplies for the occupying forces. For months, the partisans had been weaving their intricate web. Armed not just with weapons but with unparalleled understanding of the enemy's routines, they placed high-powered explosives on the tracks, waiting for the right moment to unleash chaos upon the Russian logistics.
As dawn broke, the train's approach was almost serene.
Perhaps it lured with the hope of offering sustenance to soldiers barely holding their ground. But when it reached the trap, the ground beneath buckled, and hell unleashed. With a thunderous roar, the locomotive and its cargo erupted, offering a stark reminder of the cost of occupation to the Kremlin. The explosion painted the sky with fire and debris, leaving a haunting silence in its wake. This devastating act was more than just a strike against a train, it was a message that reverberated across the battlefield. Hope still flickered in the hearts of those resisting.
Yet, this moment wasn't isolated.
It highlighted a systemic issue for Russia. The very land it occupies pulses with life and defiance, while the Kremlin grapples with an unseen enemy. The logistics of war have transformed into a treacherous game of cat and mouse, as the partisans' grassroots intelligence undermined the Kremlin's iron grip. Russia's supply routes, once thought impenetrable, laid bare and vulnerable, stripped of their life force by a network of courageous civilians willing to risk everything. As the dust settled from the October ambush, leaders within the Kremlin faced an unsettling question.
What occurs when an army's lines of supply unravel, not just from an external force, but from within?
Each act of sabotage darkened the morale of Russian troops on the front lines, amplifying whispers of despair and distrust, leading even the most loyal to contemplate desertion. Meanwhile, with every misstep, the invisible network of Ukrainian resistance flooded with new recruits, where grief transformed into vengeance.
Amidst ongoing desperation for resources, Russia's response became predictably brutal. The Kremlin's methods, fear and repression, showed their ugly face again.
Local citizens were swept up in a wave of paranoia as homes were raided and many were taken to filtration camps under the false banner of security. Yet, this ruthlessness only served to sow the seeds of further resistance. Each unjust act against innocents spurred others to join the struggle.
A mother, once indifferent, now became an ally to the partisans, whispering secrets and offering shelter.
As the landscape of war shifted, it became painfully clear that the Kremlin's traditional tactics were ill-equipped to quash the network that thrived on local knowledge. The iron fist of the FSB only intensified the fire of rebellion, igniting a cycle of resistance that proved inescapable. With endless miles of tracks and an ever-watchful populace, Ukraine's hidden warfare would continue to haunt Russia, rendering every train carriage a potential tribute to resilience and revenge.
The struggle in Ukraine serves as an acute reminder that within the darkest corners of conflict, hope is not lost.
Rather, it is nurtured by those who dare to stand against oppression, turning their mundane lives into an extraordinary fight for freedom. Every bomb planted, every strategic act of resistance, sends ripples through the fabric of war, proving that true power lies in the unity of the people and their unwavering commitment to reclaim their homeland. Only time would reveal how deep this resistance runs and how devastating the consequences would be for an empire clinging to the illusion of control. In a world where shadows lurk and whispers of betrayal echo, the Ukrainian resistance thrives.
In an unexpected twist, a family torn apart by conflict becomes the very heart of a powerful movement. What ignites such fierce determination among ordinary citizens to take up arms against an overwhelming force?
After a local mother loses her son to a filtration camp, her indifference to politics morphs into fierce loyalty for the resistance. This personal tragedy serves as a catalyst for the transformation of countless lives. As Ukrainian partisans see their loved ones taken away, the brutality of the opponent becomes fuel for revenge.
Behind the scenes, a ghost-like network orchestrates this resistance, far removed from traditional command structures.
The Ukrainian military intelligence, known as GUR, alongside the SBU, crafts a web of cells, each one a clandestine unit of 3 to 5 members. Each small group operates in secrecy, communicating with a singular handler through encrypted channels. This decentralized strategy means that even if one cell is compromised, the broader network remains intact, continuing its relentless fight. But the true horror for Russia lies not just in these hidden operatives.
Their struggle is compounded by the alienation of the local population. With heavy-handed Russification efforts forcing men to fight against their families, the heart of resistance pumps fiercely. The fighters are not merely defending their homeland, they are safeguarding their identity and future against an oppressive regime. Amidst this turmoil, tragic familial divisions arise. A father might be thrust into conflict against his own son, rippling through communities with devastating impact. For those left behind, rising up, like derailing a train of Russian munitions, becomes an act of survival, not a moral dilemma. As the Kremlin attempts to reshape identity through propaganda in schools, they misjudge the indomitable spirit of the Ukrainian people. What lies ahead for both resistance and occupier in this bitter struggle? The answer may be found in the actions that follow. As partisans continue to strike in secrecy, every act becomes a beacon of defiance against a regime that teaches a false narrative. With every explosive encounter, can the tides of fate be changed? In a realm where vengeance fuels bravery, the tale of resistance burns brightly, igniting hope against darkness. Imagine the heartbreak of families torn apart forever. Thousands of young Ukrainians, ripped from their homes, shipped off to distant camps in Russia, or handed over like unwanted burdens to foreign families, all in the twisted name of so-called patriotic training. This raw agony? It's the hidden spark that ignited the chaos on October 26. Picture it, the acrid smell of scorched earth lingering in the air, the distant rumble echoing like thunder in a storm-swept valley. What drives ordinary folks to such desperate acts? Isn't it that burning fury, deep in the chest, like a fire you can't smother? Feel the pulse of pure, unrelenting anger surging through every resistance fighter, especially those shadowy partisans hiding in plain sight. How does it feel to watch a regime snatch away your very words, your innocent children, your devoted partners? That seething wrath boils hotter than any summer blaze, unquenchable by the harshest interrogations or the iron grip of Russia's Federal Security Service, the FSB. Can you sense the weight of it, heavy as chains in the humid night air? Now, Russia stands trapped in a brutal double bind on stolen soil, a war on two fronts it can never conquer. On one flank, Ukraine's mighty regular forces grow bolder by the day, armed with EF-16 fighters, ATACMS missiles, and sleek Leopard tanks rolling like predators through the mist-shrouded fields. But turn your gaze to the shadows, an unseen force of furious, unyielding partisans swells right in the enemy's midst. They lurk beneath every rail, coiled inside humming electrical boxes, ready to spark in the wires of any turncoat's vehicle. Hear the creak of rails under strain? Smell the ozone of impending storm? What if that next whisper in the dark seals the invader's doom? This? It's the shattering downfall of Putin's ironclad defenses, crumbling like dry earth underfoot. Pull more troops from the battle lines to guard those endless tracks, and watch the front erode, fragile as cracked glass. Round up innocent locals on flimsy betrayal charges, and drive even more souls straight into the arms of defiance. It's a vicious cycle, spinning wildly out of control, chaos feeding on itself, with no escape in sight. The air thickens with tension, doesn't it? Every breath carries the question, how long until it all unravels? But here's the gut-wrenching truth behind that fiery wreck on October 26. It wasn't mere cargo lost in flames. No, it blazed as undeniable evidence, scorching hot against the dawn sky. Russia's grip slips away, unsustainable in strategy and spirit alike. The unbreakable spirit of Ukraine's people towers over the bloated pride of any so-called superpower. And the twist that chills the spine? Deep in the Kremlin's halls, they now whisper of ghosts among their own, locals who smile by day, but arm the night. Could your neighbor be the one unraveling an empire?